Welcome everyone to our first event in a series on young women, work, and financial independence. The Women's Center at St. Francis College has been working under contract with the Women's Bureau, U.S. Department of Labor, to bring you this panel along with a month of luncheon workshops on a variety of issues facing young women as they prepare to enter and to succeed in the workforce. The Women's Center has been pleased and honored to work with the Women's Bureau in our common aim to reach out to and help young women at this important time in their lives. There is a list inside your program of the working luncheons coming up in October. Each focuses on a different topic, including mentoring, which is actually this Thursday, and then negotiating your way to the top. I know I'm terrible at that. Managing your finances, check, and scoring your perfect job. So we have all of those luncheons coming up, and there will be somebody leading each one and answering your questions and talking about those various topics. Before I introduce Grace Protos of the Women's Bureau, I would like to take a minute to thank some people at St. Francis who are helpful in organizing this series of events. It was Dr. Michelle Hirsch who originally formed the contract with the Women's Bureau, so I thank her for that. And I would also like to thank Naomi Kinley, our Director of Career Services at St. Francis College. She's been instrumental in making this event happen and has been gracious in sharing her contacts and her enthusiasm for the project. It's much appreciated. I would also like to thank Rich Relkin and Robert Olivier for helping to promote and organize this event. I'd also like to thank my co-director with me who does women's studies, Emily Horowitz. Unfortunately, she's sick and I can't be with us today, but she's done a great deal of work to bring us here. And finally, I would also like to thank Dr. Nikki Phillips, who really stepped in and helped me when Dr. Horowitz got sick. So thank you very much, Nikki. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Grace Protos, the Regional Administrator for Region 2 of the Women's Bureau and U.S. Department of Labor.
Hi, everybody. I have to say the next series of events seem, and this one seems so appropriate, quite frankly, at any age, so I'm excited to come back myself and to hear some of the events, so I encourage you all to come back. I'm Grace Protos. I'm the Regional Administrator of the Women's Bureau, which is a U.S. Department of Labor agency. And on behalf of the Women's Bureau, I'd like to welcome you all to the Women's Leadership Panel, a seminar series for young women. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Women's Bureau, and then I'm going to tell you our involvement here. Our mission is to develop policies and standards to safeguard the interests of working women. And we look at women at all different levels, entering the workforce, currently in the workforce, and exiting the workforce. We advocate for their equality. We advocate for their economic security for themselves and for their families. And we promote quality work environments. And we do this by looking at four main focus areas. Currently, we're looking at promoting workplace flexibility, which is not just an issue that women face, but families face and men face. So in June, we're going to be putting on a very large workplace flexibility forum in Manhattan. It's going to be in conjunction with the White House, and we're basically furthering a dialogue that was started by the White House this past March about the importance of workplace flexibility. We're also looking at promoting jobs that get women out of the cycle of poverty and into good paying jobs. Those jobs we look at are non-traditional employment for women, which could be anything from working as a construction worker or working in another non-traditional field where women are not very highly represented. We're looking at getting women into the STEM fields, which are the science, technology, engineering, and math fields, and the green fields, and so you'll hear a little bit about this today from our panelists. And we're looking at focusing on improving the services that homeless female veterans face. There are a lot of homeless female veterans. They're really under the current. There's not a lot of information about them, but we know they exist, and we want to figure out ways that we can really help solidify their pipeline to work. And we're also working on narrowing the wage gap, so looking at issues of equal pay, keeping the conversation going, which is something that we think doesn't really take place in the younger generations as much as it should. So we're focusing on that area as well. One of the ways that we support the needs of women in the work environments is by coming together and working collaboratively with other organizations. This is an example of something that we would do. We also recently worked with a nonprofit in Manhattan that we put together a forum on equal pay. It was also targeted toward young women to keep the conversation going. And so these are the kinds of things that we do in support of our mission. So our involvement here actually came out of a brainstorming session in my office. We were trying to come up with something that would really support the needs of young women as they enter the workforce, and came up with this idea. And so we were really delighted that St. Francis decided to take this on and saw it as a project that they really could work with. And so under a contract with the Women's Bureau, they're offering this series. So again, I want to encourage you to come to the other ones as well. Bring a friend, bring somebody from the outside. It's open to people from the outside. And finally, I'd like to say thank you to St. Francis, and in particular to Dr. Devlin, Assistant Professor of English and Co-Director of the Women's Studies Center. Also Dr. Horowitz, who couldn't be here today, Assistant Professor of Sociology and Criminal Justice and Co-Director of the Women's Studies Center, for putting this together and working so hard to make this happen. And finally, I'd like to thank our panelists, who you'll meet in just a moment, Ramona Boston, Irma Garcia, Marni Marjorelle, and Susan Pickman, for taking their time to talk with us today and to impart their knowledge. And I really encourage you to start your networking and really think about the questions that you want to ask. I mean, these are people with experience, and you should really take this opportunity to learn as much as you can. So thank you for coming.
You have before you 3 very different women who have pursued very, very different career trajectories and work in very, very different fields. Their bios are in your program, and I'm not going to take the time to read them all to you now, but I want to just say a couple words about the different industries that they're in, so you get a sense of what they do and the disparate places they come from. Susan Pickman, Dr. Susan Pickman, works in criminal justice. She worked as a police officer and as somebody who also worked in internal affairs, although there was a different name for the place you worked in Orlando. It wasn't called internal affairs. Professional standards, thank you. But came to that field after doing something different, so we're going to hear about that. And we also have Ramona Boston, who works in financial services at Morgan Stanley. She is the chief marketing officer at Morgan Stanley and a managing director, which is a very, very difficult place to reach at Morgan Stanley. So we're very happy to have her here as well. And we have also our own Irma Garcia, who is the head of our athletics program at St. Francis, and the only woman, I believe, to run a Division I athletics program. Yeah, but aren't you also the only woman? No. Okay. I thought you were. We couldn't find. I looked around. I couldn't find another. But so the only Hispanic woman to run a Division I athletic program. Ramona and Irma, you both actually started quite young at the place where you still are. I mean, both of you have been at your institution or organization for quite a number of years. So if you can think about how you got started, a little bit about how you got started, but also I think it's very important for people to know how, once you find a job, how you can grow in that job and continue to grow in that job and continue to make it exciting and to progress financially and otherwise as you continue in the job. So if you want to speak to that, that would be great.
I love creativity, I love graphic design, et cetera, et cetera. So when this job was offered at Morgan Stanley, it was actually for a traffic coordinator in the graphics department. And my parents said, oh, you have to take it. Morgan Stanley's this fantastic firm. Just get your foot in the door and then you'll become a financial services person. And I was like, oh, I don't really know if I want to do that, but let me just go to Morgan Stanley. Well, the net is I didn't go into finance, but I stayed in the sort of the creative space, marketing space, if you will. And in terms of, I just continued to find things that the firm was missing in terms of a marketing or creativity or design. And what I did is I essentially took on roles and responsibilities that no one else in the firm would take on. I mean, they simply were not focused on marketing. Creativity was like for financial products. It wasn't for creating brochures or annual reports or websites or anything along those lines. So my advice really is, in that type of situation, is you should find a firm that it's a good firm to work for, but also then make a niche for yourself. Fill a void that the firm does not have and that you can fulfill and you enjoy doing. And that's what I did, and I've done very well by it. So as the firm has grown, my role as the marketing person has grown with it. So, you know, I think if you can find some place where you fill that void and doing something that you enjoy doing is important.
Well, I think many of you who know me, my passion has always been sports. I'm excited to be on what they call a true Franciscan, meaning that you're a student here, and then you continue to work. And I was the women's basketball coach, then assistant AD, then associate AD, and then the director of athletics. I remember when I first started here at St. Francis, it was a part-time job, women's basketball. It was really a full-time job, but part-time salary. And I remember that I was only 28 and was one of the first basketball coaches at that age, was very young. And my assistants were male. And what happened was that everywhere I went that first year, they would go up to the assistant coach and say, "Coach, do you need anything?" acting like he was the head coach. After a while, it became a joke, like, you know, let's see what they're going to do, the next coach. I learned very quickly that you cannot take any job personal. Anything that people say, and being a female and Hispanic, there's always going to be obstacles, as my panelist friends here are mentioning. But it's very important that whatever you do, that you just don't go into it, and what may happen, don't take it personal. It's been a great road, and still, I mean, I'm living my dream. I'm actually, every day, even today when it was a difficult day, Megan, who works with me, it's still the best job in the whole wide world. And that's the kind of passion that you want to, whatever job you get, you want to have that kind of passion. You want to go in it and know that you're going to expect the unexpected, but you're going to get through it. One of the things that women do, if you don't mind me just chiming in, is that we have, and no offense to our male counterparts here, we have mommy genes, okay? And people who are mommies, you understand what I'm talking about. We know how to work around, you know, we know how to multitask. We have great organizational skills, okay? We know how to delegate. Okay, you take this, you take that. And these are qualities that you need to be a director of athletic, a director of anywhere, or be in a high-level job. And that you know that things are going to happen, and you always think outside the box. So these are qualities that I think that we all have, and that once you find your passion, once you find your niche, what you want to go into, that you can become the best person for that job. And you have to remember that it is just a job. Okay, we all know that we all work some crazy hours, and you know, especially in my field, you work crazy hours, but it's just a job. When you go home, it's still family.
I'm going to get to that.
Yeah. And you know, I could just talk forever on this panel. Athena's going to have to hold some things up. But it's just so important that we understand, and as I'm sorry. Grace, you mentioned about quality of life. As much as you know that you want to be working, it's important to make sure that you make time for who you are and for your family and for your friends. I won't chime in more.
That's fine. Thank you very much, really. All three of you mentioned, you all used the word obstacles in what you were just saying, and you all mentioned that you conquered a lot of those obstacles, and the work and the place where you are in your jobs shows that. But I'm wondering, we're going to have a session here specifically on mentoring, And I'm wondering about the place of mentoring and helping women overcome these obstacles. And I know, for instance, Ramona, that at Morgan Stanley it's a very hierarchical structure, and I know that mentoring is very, very important. And I'm wondering if women get the same kind of mentoring as men do, and what women can do to find a mentor, and if that's been an issue for you in your career.
Well, I think I alluded to this earlier when we spoke. One of the obstacles for me was that I did not have a mentor at the firm. And I think it's very important for everyone here to make a distinction between a mentor and a champion. And those two things are very, very different. A mentor typically is not your boss. They're not someone that you work directly for, but they're someone that you can go to on the side to voice your frustrations, to talk about things that are bothering you, and to help coach you through any issues or concerns you might have at the firm, but they're not going to have a direct impact on your day-to-day working life. A champion is someone who recognizes the value that you bring to the firm, and someone that's going to actually propel you forward and put you up for that promotion that someone might not, and works the system for you and helps you to actually move forward in an organization. So I think it's very important for whoever's starting out in the workforce to try and find someone within the firm or the place in which you work that you can use as a sounding board. If you're not 100% sure how you should handle a certain situation or a confrontation that you're having with a colleague or a peer or a subordinate, if you're a manager or something along those lines, it's very, very important. And I think oftentimes women in the workplace, because we're so busy, because we have these work-life balance issues, we don't have the time that we should give to other women in the workplace and actually forge relationships with other women. So if there's one thing I could say is, we as women should reach out to other women on a more frequent basis. It's easy to say you don't have the time, but if we're really going to make an impact in terms of changing how women are treated in the workplace, we have to step up and actually do more to help promote that.
Because men do that.
Men automatically
they know how to
do
network.
that. And I think, it's one of the things that at Morgan Stanley we're working very hard to ensure that women are much more engaged with other women to help move them forward. So.
Yes, very, very much. And actually, the clarification between a champion and a mentor is, I think, very important.
Yes, it's a very important distinction,
yeah.
Because I did not have a mentor, but I did have a champion. And it was one of the biggest things for me in my career. I was a vice president. I'd been a vice president for 5 or 6 years, and I was getting increasingly frustrated. And I didn't have anyone to talk to about it, so finally I went to my boss, and I said, I really would like to become an executive director. And he goes, oh, really? Like, that was, really? I'm shocked. And I was like, well, yes, I would like to be an executive director. He's like, well, of course you should be. And I was like, well, I had to ask you for it, And so from that point forward, his name, he's a great guy. He's a real guy's guy. He works in the fixed income department, which is, sort of the athletic jock guys of Morgan Stanley. He used to sit in an office with his feet up on the desk throwing a baseball around, and I'd be trying to talk to him about something and the ball would be flying around. Like, all right, But from that point forward, I was up for another job, and he actually went to the person who recruited me for this other job in firm-wide marketing and said, you know what, you have to take Ramona. She's a real asset to the organization, and not only are you going to take her, but I didn't promote her, you have to promote her, and you have to give her this increase in her pay. And he's been tracking me for the last couple of years, and he's been an MD for quite a while, and he's still at the firm. But from that point forward, he really gave me that push forward, and that's the type of person that you need in that space. But a mentor is something different. A mentor is someone you can really open your heart to and sort of say exactly how you're feeling, and they'll coach you along.
Yeah, Susan, because you work in a very male-dominated field in police work. I mean, would you have either a champion or a mentor?
University administration at that time was
pretty
also male-dominated as well. But I must say that in both cases, I had a champion. When I came to the university system, and this also plays on not only finding mentors, but taking advantage of whatever educational opportunities and training opportunities there are. Because sometimes if you tell somebody that you're just not satisfied with what you know about something and you want to know more, I wound up in the Institute for Educational Management at the Harvard Business School because I said to somebody, I'd like to know more about this. And he said, oh, you should go to Harvard. And I was the youngest person there, but it was one of the greatest experiences of my life, and it helped with everything else. So I had a vice president at the university who helped me because I was very young and I didn't know what I needed to know, really. I knew technically what I needed to do, and I knew it better than a lot of other people, but for precisely that reason, I needed to have somebody help me to understand how I could speak to people who could have been my father, and how to get my points across without there being a major conflict. When I came to the police department, I was assigned, when I was assigned to the chief staff, I was assigned to a lieutenant who, you know, I came from New York and he went hunting for deer. And we had some differences of opinions on various things, but I'm proud to say that I've known him for 30 years now, and he's tracked my career. He became chief of police, and now he's a U.S. Marshal. He's a presidential appointee. And we're still friends, and we've bridged those kind of gaps, and in the process of doing it, we've learned a lot, both of us, about the way in which policing had to change and what needed to be done to change. And we had some discussions about changes in policing through the 80s, which is when a lot of things happened. Use of deadly force changed, a lot of arrestee rights and all of that. And I helped make some of those changes, and I'm pleased with that, but I would not have been able to if I didn't recognize that there were people I needed to speak to who knew more about some of the things that I didn't know about. There were some sergeants who didn't have any higher degrees, but they basically saved my life by training me in the areas that I needed to know that I didn't know. And I give myself credit that I listened to them also.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I hear you saying that's very important is that we don't always know who our mentors are going to be, and to be open to collecting mentors, collecting champions as we go, and to not necessarily assume that we know who those people are going to be, but also from what Ramona said, to really speak up. I think what you both said is that you really have to always ask questions. You have to always show your interest and speak up, and I think that is very useful.
I mean, the term the squeaky wheel gets the grease. You know, there's something to that. You don't want to whine and complain, but you definitely want to know. Definitely want people to know your concerns and how things need to be addressed. So oftentimes women take a back seat and they're not vocal about it. You need to be heard, and you shouldn't be scared of doing that. But you do have to balance that with not being whiny, not complaining, and sometimes you just have to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and soldier on. When I was made managing director, they passed me over twice, and that was a really tough pill to swallow. I wanted to leave the firm. They didn't promote me, but you know what? I said, I'm going to work harder next year, and it'll come, and finally it did. And you know what? Success is much sweeter when you work harder for it. So when you finally get it, you're like, maybe it should have come sooner, maybe not. But you know, sometimes you have to pay your dues. So. Marjorelle has joined us.
Sorry,
it's
I'm
okay.
late.
No, that's fine. I just want to introduce her very briefly. She runs Alive Structures, which is she founded, which is, can I call it a green energy? Would you call it green energy company?
I don't know if this is necessary, the microphone, is it? Okay. We're not green energy, we're more landscape design, really, but we have a focus on green roofs, which does save energy, so that's, that association makes sense.
So we're just talking a bit about mentors and the issue and the importance of having mentors, and to have started your own company, which is, I've actually heard a statistic that I think 70% of all new companies are now being started by women, which I think is a surprising but great statistic. And you started your own. tell us a little bit about how that came about, and if you had a mentor to help you, and how you sort of got started.
I think the start of my own business was less like courageous and glamorous and more really just practical. I think most of the young people in this audience have already experienced that companies don't want to hire you. They'd rather hire you as a freelancer, as an independent contractor. You know, the taxes and the health care are really a large deterrent to becoming part of a larger company. Hence the reason why I think so many young people are starting their own companies is because we really have to. Honestly, I wanted to work for somebody else, and that's what happened to me. And they said I should just really start my own entity, and they would hire me as a subcontractor. So it wasn't really like I was a gung-ho, I really want to start my own business. I'm sorry. But it was more, you know, I'm passionate about green roofs and improving the environment, and I didn't care if it was my business or someone else's. Now that I run my own business, the idea of working for someone else is, you know, absurd, because you get rather used to being your own boss. But I just wanted to do what I was interested in, and I think people were, I see so many people starting their own businesses, and I sort of want to tell them to stop. Sorry, I know this is a bit about trying to get you all to start your own business. But I think that there's a lot of challenges to starting your business, and I think you really need to know what you're doing. I mean, you'll never know what you're doing until you start. But I just think there should be more people working for other people. There should be more jobs. There should be an ability to become absorbed into a company that you believe in and that you want to work for. Because to start your own company is really hard. And I think a lot of people do it very casually and don't know, you know, what they're getting into. And I think you know, it should be given a lot more careful thought and look around, you know, if there's any other options. Unless you really want to, of course, start your own business, in which case you definitely should.
No, I do. We're not centering on starting your own. You're actually the only one on the panel that started their own business. It's more just about working. Oh, no, that's right, because you are a licensed private investigator.
And a certified fraud examiner, and I have a business in doing that.
Do you employ other people in that?
No, I work with, just about everybody I work with is retired from law enforcement, so as a consequence, they're all independent contractors. So if I need a polygraph examiner, a lie detector person, I've got one who was with the FBI for 35 years. Or if I need somebody to go follow people, I've got some guys who have done that for a living on drug cases and the like. So it's almost all independent contractors. As a matter of fact, everybody is. So I have a part-time employee, but that's it. And that person is a subcontractor also, is a freelancer, works for other people.
Well, off of a little bit, going off of what Marni just said about how tough it is to start your own business, there is a question that I wanted to ask, and this is really for all of you to answer, because I think that women deal with it in different ways. And that is the work-life balance issue. Because, and here's another statistic, women still do 3 times as much as their male partners on the domestic front. So if a woman works and her husband works, and they both have full-time jobs, a woman is usually going to work 3 times more than her husband does on any domestic issue, which is taking care of sick parents, taking care of kids, cleaning up the house, doing the laundry, all of those things. At the same time, I think that it is true that women still do, and I really feel that listening to Ramona that this is true, that women do still have to work pretty hard, perhaps harder than men, to prove themselves in a lot of these fields. So you kind of have the double whammy of having to work harder at work and hold more of the domestic responsibility. So how do you deal with that, and how, and especially, you know, I really agree with the point that women need mentors, and we just don't have time to mentor each other. So, how do you deal with the work-life balance issue? What have you sort of come to terms with about that issue? And we can, all of you can speak to that.
Well, the one thing I would say, that a colleague of mine also, I can attribute this quote to her. She said, your career is a distance run and it's not a sprint. So I think what you have to take stock of is you're going to have a family. I mean, I just had a baby 4 months ago. So I'm just now working out the whole work-life balance. So it was really easier before. It was just my husband and I. But I think you just have to take it one day at a time, and it's difficult. I mean, I really don't have an answer. I think, but it is the idea of a distance run versus a sprint. You don't have to get everything done in 5 years. I've been at the firm for 23 or 24 years, and a number of women at my firm have lengthy careers as well, and you take time off. You go and you raise your child, you have some, and I think what's important is, and it gets back to, unfortunately, I think you have the point that women were, big firms are hiring more freelancers and consultants, and that is problematic, but if you do have the I'll call it a luxury of joining a larger organization, you should do one that has the right benefits for you. I think the firm that you choose to work for is very, very important, that they do the right things for their employees, and I never used to think that way. I thought, oh, the firm is a firm is a firm, but they're not, and they're not all cut from the same cloth, and some offer much more flexible work arrangements. A lot of firms, my firm in particular, offers great opportunity in terms of working 3 days a week from home. You know, these little things help make life a lot easier, and I didn't think I would take advantage of some of them, but you do. Just reducing your commuting time, just being able to stay home and telecommute. I mean, those are all things that workplaces are now offering more and more women, so I think it should probably make it easier. But I think for women, you know, if it takes a man, you know, 10 years to get to a certain job, well, if you took a break and you had a child, maybe it takes you 12 years or 13 years, but at the same time, you're still getting there. Maybe it takes you a little bit longer, but I think, you know, you get the benefit of having raised your children, and that's an equal part of having a full life. So
I remember when, again, going back to coaching, I was also the coach plus the senior woman administrator, plus really kind of doing financial aid, compliance kind of stuff. And I used to come in before 8 a.m. and not leave St. Francis 11 p.m. I'm not kidding. And when I said to myself, if I ever make it to director of athletics, I'm going to change the rules. And I did. And it's important that my staff, myself, quality time is so important to me. It's so important that I get the most out of my staff. I mean, at St. Francis, everybody only has a few staff members. So I want to utilize them the best I can. So I basically told them, Friday is your day off. I mean, you can work from home, you can work at work, but you can answer your emails, but you don't have to do meetings. You don't have to try to get yourself where you have time for yourself. I think it's so important. And I don't have kids. I have 200 kids actually. But it's important. It's important that, you know, if I'm overwhelmed, I leave. I don't work from 8 to 11 anymore. Those days are gone. Because I think it's important that you're not going to help anybody if you're not healthy, mentally healthy, and if you're not going in it with your heart and smiling every day. You can't do that if you work from 8 to 11 every day. And you're right, women tend to do that. My mentors have I stay in touch with people who mentor me. I also mentor student athletes, students. I also mentor women who are just getting into the athletics world. It's important to do that. It's important to give what you learn. Now, I also believe in, just to chime in what Ramona said, professional growth is so important. I've learned all this because I sat in a room just like this and listened to people say, these are the things you have to do. Try this, try that. It's so important that you go to these seminars or these professional growth information, so that way you can give back and that way you feel good about who you are. So every day you're going to give your fullest, but you're still going to take time for who you really want to be.
Let me say also that you have to investigate who you're going to work for. When I worked at the university, I instituted 10-hour, 4-day a week arrangements. Places that will allow you to do the things that you think will work and will allow you to make accommodations to good people for their schedules, whether they're people with other abilities or whether they're individuals who can't work because they have kids, so they have to be at daycare at 9 o'clock, so they can't come in until 9:30, but they're willing to adjust their hours. All of those kind of things will give you the most loyal staff in the world. They may work like crazy, but they will be eternally loyal. The other thing is that you do have to realize that your life is important to you. I stopped out for a while I was in law enforcement because my son was growing up and he was having some problems in school, and I was involved in my own business. When he stopped having problems, I went back into law enforcement. But I went to work for a department that turned out not to be where I wanted to be. They were violating some things that I thought were essential for law enforcement agencies. Fortunately, I had somebody I could call up and say, I can't stand to be here. Somebody's going to get killed, and this is not right. And they said to me, come over and take a polygraph examination, and we'll have you on the street in our uniform in a couple of weeks. And that happened, and I went to work for what I perceived to be a very credible law enforcement agency. But be very careful about who you sign up with, what they're willing to do, and what their philosophies are in terms of their employees. It will pay off in the long run.
Thank you. Marni, can you speak as an employer maybe a little bit? I mean, how do you kind of, for the people who work for you, how do you think about work-life balance for yourself and for perhaps your employees?
Well, I'm married, but I have no children, and I'm very lucky because my husband does the laundry and he cooks. And I think he would be perfectly happy to stay home with the kids if we have kids, and I could go to work every day, so I feel like I have a very unusual situation.
Find one of those.
Very
important.
Find a good firm and find a good partner.
Okay, well, but on the other hand, me and my husband work together. My husband and I work together, and that's something I wouldn't necessarily recommend. But I am seeing a lot of couples working together, and I feel like it might even be part of the economy. My husband actually lost his business before he started working with me. So if he hadn't lost his business, I think we would be two individuals running businesses, which might be a little nuts. But in terms of my employees, I employ 2 people full-time and only 1 person all year round, not counting myself and my husband. And right now I have probably 10 people working for me, like at this moment on 3 different sites. And I'm a seasonal business. You know, in about a month I'll have no work, and right now I'm completely insane. And it's a little bit like we're squirrels collecting nuts, you know, before the frost. That's kind of how landscaping business is. And I would really like to be able to keep the same employees every year. At the same time, I'm also trying to upgrade. As we move forward, I want our company to be as professional as possible. And so I also have to, you know, take into question, you know, who's really doing the best, where can I find someone better, can I pay someone a bit more who's got these credentials, and then we can say, yeah, we are landscape architects, you know, those kind of things, stepping up. But it does cost more money. One of my employees has a child, and he's about the same age as me, and sometimes there's things that he needs to do, and I'm, of course, flexible, and I think that's important for him. And I can tell that at some point he's really exhausted, and I can see it, and I just tell him, I really don't think you should come in and work, and I think you need to chill out. And so I think that's important, just to see when someone's really not there, you know.
Okay, well, as a sort of kind of final thing, I mean, I want to give the audience a chance to ask some questions, but I have one last question for all of you, if you all could all answer it, which is just what piece of advice do you wish someone had given you when you were entering the workforce? What do you think, you know, in speaking to an audience of people who are entering the workforce, what piece of advice do you wish you had gotten when you were at this stage? You can just go straight down the line.
I wish somebody had told me how to deal when I was young with older individuals. How to get change accomplished without unnecessarily making enemies. Because it's essential, if you're going to do what you like to do, if you're going to be successful, if you're not going to bat your head against the wall and be terribly frustrated, you have to figure out how to work with people. And so one of the most essential things I think I needed to work out when I was young was how to best work with people in an organizational environment.
And that you're not always the expert, right?
Right, your expertise varies, and you need to recognize that also. There's always something to learn from somebody else.
There's so many. I think perhaps, from my own experience, is that don't shy away from something that you don't fully understand or know. I'm not phrasing that correctly. Just jump in with both feet. If someone offers you an opportunity and you're not quite sure, oh, I kind of know something about it, but you know what? It could be the opportunity of a lifetime. Jump in, and you'll learn how to do it. Trust me. You know, you'll find the people to network with or build relationships with, and you'll get it done. It might be a lot of hard work, but at the end of the day, you're creating value for yourself, and you'll figure it out. Oftentimes, I think what women do is they think, oh, I can't take that job. I have to read, you know, this textbook, and I need to understand every itty-nit thing about this particular issue. And the bottom line is, you don't. You can probably figure it out if you put your mind to it. And I think tied to that is, I think, networks and relationships is something that I probably didn't do very successfully at the beginning of my career. And I think it's very important that you do that at the start of your career and keep those relationships up. Have coffee with someone, have a lunch with someone, put it on your calendar once a week, and make sure you stick to it. And be disciplined about keeping that up, because you might need those people further along in your career, or you might need their help. And I think it's very important that you maintain those networks and relationships.
I guess best advice I probably could have used was someone to tell me that expect the unexpected. I learned that later on as an athletic director. But early on, there's always going to be something. There's always something's going to happen. What's going to deter you from opening the door for you, or you want to do something and it's not there, or you walk in to the workplace and something is not exactly what you expected it to be. I mean, it could be almost anything. Now, I go into the job and I'm expecting something to happen, whether it's good, bad, indifferent. But the attitude is, I do not take it personal. I try not to take it personal. I try to go in there with open eyes and just say, okay, things will work out. Somehow I'll figure it out. I accept everything as a challenge. It's not a problem for me. Everything's a challenge. And I think it's when I was younger, when I first got into the field of athletics, everything was a problem. So if somebody would have told me that early on, but you know what? I'm the director of athletics, so I'm happy. That all worked out.
But the thing is, I think that I echo that, is that when you're new to a job, you always think of it as a And it's just a process that you have to work through, and again, leveraging the people that you have around you to help work out the process, and that's something, the male-female thing, I think women take it on. It's like you take it on your shoulders, and you feel like, I'm the one who has to solve the problem, and that's not it. There are a lot of people there that want to help you solve the problem, because at the end of the day, if you work at a good firm and you have a good team, it's a team effort to get you where you want to go. And everyone's going to benefit, so embrace people to help you solve the problem. Absolutely. And then the one last thing, which I do think is something we're going to have to work on, and I continue to work on it every day, and you said this a couple of times already, you can't get emotional. And you can't take anything personally, and men are very good at this. And even a boyfriend-girlfriend situation, husband, how many times does your boyfriend or your husband say to you, don't get so emotional, you know, relax. You have to relax, and you can't, it's business. You just take it as it comes, just keep it rolling, and don't get emotional. Because women get emotional, and when you start to get emotional, things start to, they roll out of control. So I think that's a very important one as well.
Marni?
I wish you would have told me that advice earlier today, actually. I think I had like a semi-nervous breakdown on the Brooklyn Bridge, when, you know. I don't know necessarily if women are more susceptible to, you know, stress than men. I don't think so. I think New York City is a very, very stressful, competitive place, and and very demanding. And if you have clients in New York City that have a lot of money, let's say, they're going to be very, very demanding. And you have to learn to work with that and not necessarily get frustrated when all of a sudden maybe, you know, they change their minds about something. Or I was just thinking sort of about a metaphor with cooking. I remember someone telling me the most important thing about cooking is being prepared. You don't turn the light on underneath the frying pan before you have all your ingredients cut up right next to it. So I know that seems so sort of like silly somehow, but logistics, the small details of how a project is going to work through. Think about it. Don't shy away of all those, you know, questions that might seem ridiculous to ask yourself at first, like, well, is that truck gonna fit in front of the house? Should I go measure it? Is that crazy? Did I measure it? No, actually, maybe I just should. Yeah, you should. If you're thinking that, you should. You should measure it, because all of a sudden you can't fit the crane in it, you know? So find out as much as you can. It's worth it to go, you know, even if it takes time, you know, and go visit a site, or, you know, Google some client and, you know, find out who it is and what he or she's past is, to get some more insight into who you might be dealing with. Whatever, you know, the type of work that you're going into, get all your ingredients, all your logistics lined up before all of a sudden you just jump into that fun cooking project that you're going to make. But I do think it's just wonderful. It's very true what's been said, that you should take opportunities. You should jump into many things that you might not necessarily have read all the textbooks on.
Well, that's different, right?
It is. It's kind of two different things. You know, I think
you have to be prepared.
Yes.
Your job, but if you're offered something, it's different than showing up with a crane and it's too big for this.
Right. Don't show up with a crane that's too big for the parking spot. Now that, you can use that as a metaphor, but, you know, just remember that. That's all.
I have one more thing.
Yes, please.
Is you have to be really passionate about what you do.
Yeah.
And just showing up, I mean, there's that old adage, you have to have success is just showing up. You can't just show up at where you work and expect to be a success and just sort of check the box, check, you know, click the timesheet or whatever it is. If you don't like what you're doing, people will know, and you're not going to be passionate about it, and you're not going to succeed. I mean, I feel very strongly that you have to love what you do. I think you love what you do, you love what I mean, you can tell when someone loves what they do. And if you love what you do, you're going to do it with excellence, you're going to do it with pride, and you're going to want to succeed, and people are going to see that. And you know what? People want to be around winners, and if you do that, then you're a winner, And people are going to want to be around you, they're going to want to work with them, and they're going to want to work for you eventually. So if anything, you have to have that. And if you don't have it, you should find out what it is and then go get the job or create the job. That's going to give that to you.
Thank you guys so much. This was all very, very helpful and wonderful to hear and sort of reaffirming for me. But I also think good for our students to hear and for faculty to hear and the people that are with us today. So thank you very much. And I also want to take a minute to ask the audience if they have any questions for our panelists. Before we eat.
Get hungry.
Yes, we've got several. Next to you, Naomi.
Hi, I'm a student here. As far as finding a mentor, like for after you graduate, like what are some advice that you would give students to get like the appropriate mentor? Should we get someone in the field that we're going to go into, or could you be like a family member or like?
Let me suggest first of all that you don't wait until you go into a company. Don't wait until after you graduate. There are probably faculty members around. There are people that you will hear speak. I bring speakers to my classes, and they're always willing to give their email address out to students. And this is like a hidden gem for students. And you should take advantage of those. Some of those people won't want to be bothered, but many of them will be delighted to get a question from you occasionally about how to get into the field, what they think of this place or that place, and really become a mentor. I have a student, African-American woman, who was an intern for me. It's got to be 15 years ago now. And now she's a successful lawyer, and she still calls occasionally, and we have dinner from time to time. But I would start setting up your mentors early on.
I'd be happy to be a mentor.
Thank you.
I think there was a question over here.
Yeah. Before getting into academia, I worked for about 9 years in the financial services industry. And I seem to come across way too often men in particular getting involved in unnecessary competition and posturing that got in the way of actually doing stuff. And I found over this time that women seem to be better about women seem to be better about actually trying to get something done, cooperate and get something done. And I'm going to see if you agree with that, and if so, if that's a strength actually for the women here.
Yeah, I mean, I think you alluded to this. The bottom line is women are multitaskers. That's just the nature of who we are, because we're constantly, you're taking care of the home, you're taking care of your family, making sure that, you're getting the gift for the, confirmation, whatever the case may be. So, yeah, I think women in general are doers, and I think they are very tactical. They get stuff done. And I think men like to oftentimes, not all men, I mean, I don't want to stereotype them.
But you don't.
Yeah, but I do think you do see I see my fair share of that. I think they do sit and posture and pontificate and strategize, and at the end of the meeting you say, okay, well, what are we doing now? It's like, enough now. We've spent 45 minutes talking. What's the tactical action plan? Yeah, and I think, not everyone's the same, but yeah, there's still, nothing's changed.
Yeah, it's basically, even when I go to meetings in the conference, and there's people who talk and people who want to get it done. And basically, I'm always, if Megan can vouch for me, let's just get it done. We talked enough, let's get it done.
Whatever we need to do.
Yeah.
I think I want to just add on one more thing to that. I think it applies to blame also. I don't think it's so necessary always when there's some mistake that's happened or something that's gone wrong to say, okay, well, whose fault is it, and let's figure out how to punish them. You may not say it exactly like that, but there is a fair amount of that. Yeah, it's like, who can we blame for this problem? Again, why focus on that? Let's move forward. This is the situation now. You know, if there is an ongoing problem, you have to confront it. You don't want to just, you know, close your eyes to something. But I think blame is something that's overused, and I think people should just say, okay, something happened, let's move on.